So, good morning, good evening, or good afternoon, wherever you are based. My name is Gabriele Romagnoli, and wherever you are, I think this is a great opportunity today. Thanks for being here with us and with Hector to actually discuss about what is on the mouth of a lot of people, and it's like healthcare. How can you implement AI in a way that really helps a health professional? And of course, I'm here as a head of community from ShapesXR, a design and prototyping tool. And of course, that is the bridge between us. And we are going to get a lot of questions, I hope, from you here listening together with us. I see people that start arriving. And maybe let's do this while we wait for some people to join in, Hector. And maybe also for you guys to tell us where you are from. I'm based in the Netherlands. Hector, what about you? Where are you based right now?
Well, Gabriel, thanks a lot for the intro. But right now, I'm based in LA. Our team is, it's all over the world right now. Kind of as you know, part of our team is in Peru. But right now, I'm located in LA, also pushing our operations into North America. But yes.
Yeah. So, and what about people joining here right now? So let us know, where are you from? We got actually an unprecedented number of subscribers this time. So we see that there is Veronica Chiaravalli, that I think it's Italian. That feels like based in Sweden. Hi, Veronica. It is a pleasure to have you here. And we also have people from Central and CUS North America. Hi, Maynard. And other people, I'm pretty sure they're gonna come in and join the stream. So, and I was saying, we got an unprecedented number of subscription for this event. That's showing indeed how relevant and timely this is, right? So let's start maybe by, so we see we got people probably from Sweden, Ontario, Canada, Germany, Brazil, really from Tanzania. Interesting. We also got more people from Europe, from France. So I think it's really great to have you here. And today the topic is healthcare and AI.
Yes.
And I'm not saying this just as a way to put again these two words together, right? But because it struck me when I tried Simtryx how these two things were intertwined. So today, what we will do is that we will discuss with Hector about what is Simtryx, what are you building, how did you manage to build this mixed reality experience, what was part of your design and development process, as well as then understanding what was the implementation with AI that you did, what were the challenges, what were the benefits. So we're going to cover a lot of ground, and would love also to have anybody here listening share our questions, open it up. We're going to keep good track of it and make sure that we ask them to Hector during or maybe towards the end of the interview. So, Hector, tell us more about Simtryx. Your focus is healthcare. Maybe why?
Perfect. So, a little bit about myself, but I've been working in the aerospace for 7 years now, a bit more over 7 years. I've been working in multiple industries, safety, mining, because I'm Peruvian. There's a lot of mining industry going on in Latin America. So we built a lot for multiple industries. And I noticed at one point during I think the end of 2024 that, or sorry, the end of 2023 actually, that the healthcare industry, it was an industry that needed a lot of XR, but wasn't quite there yet in how it delivered the product. So
Mm.
we decided with our team that we had multiple projects under our belt in making training seamless for people that didn't even know how sometimes to manage a computer. In Peru, a lot of people in mining don't even know how to properly manage very hard simulation projects. So we thought that we needed to use all of our experience in accessibility and put it into healthcare. We thought that was really what was needed in healthcare. And so we started Simtryx then in 2024 with that in mind. It was definitely triggered by the coming of the XR wave that we have right now, the MetaQuest 3, the Apple Vision Pro. We saw that all these headsets required a new way of interacting with the simulation. So we needed then hand tracking for everything. We needed AI to do that back and forth with whatever you interact in. We needed mixed reality to reduce any kind of nausea dizziness, to make it seamless between your peers. So that was our main thesis, and that's how we started in Simtryx.
So why don't we maybe to give an impression to people, should we maybe show a quick video, or maybe you want to share some visual? What do you prefer? Because we have some assets here. What do you
Yeah.
prefer?
Yeah, I think the video will be pretty straightforward to show the people what it's all about.
Absolutely. So let's go with this out. And another thing that maybe people should take care because and notice is this is a video featuring some of the things in your newest updates where there's like co-located experience, right? So when there are multiple people in the same physical environment in mixed reality can interact with the digital content in real time. Right, and I think
Yes.
it's very cool because you don't see that very often around. So let's show this quick video, and then we're going back to the interview.
Perfect.
Could you please lie down?
I can try, but it hurts a lot when I move.
Don't worry, we're going to help you. I see you have some bruises.
Yes, I have some bruises, but the worst is the pain on my left abdomen, like a heavy pressure on my left side. It gets worse when I move or breathe.
How much pain do you have from 1 to 10?
I'd say about an 8. It's quite severe.
I'm gonna start with the physical tests, okay? Breathe for me, okay? Breathe deep.
I hope so. I'm just really worried about this pain in my abdomen.
So I think that does indeed gives a good impression, and I'm curious to know if people have straight up some question about what they have just seen. I'm pretty sure they might have, but maybe I want to start you asking, like, how did you decide? What you decided to create this training in mixed reality? You mentioned about remove motion sickness. Like, is that the only reason? Are there others?
Perfect. So, kind of how I mentioned, I think Simtryx started or was triggered by the new coming of the headsets. And we were like, this is the perfect moment to redefine and start designing out of the box from what we know from our experience from VR and start designing for a new wave, a new generation of headsets. So, to us, from day one, it was mixed reality. And why do we believe in mixed reality? Well, initially, it was motivated by wanting to reduce to its minimum any feeling of dizziness and nausea, a feeling of displacement, which can
Mm,
happen a lot, especially if you're not well versed in VR, which is our main target. You know, students, nurses, doctors, all those. I mean, all that audience isn't really well versed in VR yet. So we need to do that. But then, and I gotta add this. But then we found out that actually mixed reality adds a lot to the immersion because as you can see
mm,
in the video, the only 3D elements are the patients, but they come in into real world elements. So having the real world doesn't detract from the immersion, but actually heightens it, is what we found out.
mm.
So again, I'm definitely a true believer of MR, and it's been probably the single best decision we've made since day one. Yeah.
That's curious. I don't know if people that are here listening are actually also developing or building indeed VR trainings, and if so, if they have experimented with mixed reality as well. Because that is also another thing. The moment that the Quest Pro and then Quest 3 came out, I was expecting to see more content, more experience that will leverage mixed reality. And that's also one of the reasons at ShapesXR why we have also started from really day one implement this very strong and robust mixed reality prototyping feature. So you basically have materials that you can use to add some sort of like occlusion to the environment. We have this dollhouse mode that you can use to go up and down and in general move around and really make it suitable for prototyping in mixed reality. Have you seen indeed some great example of people using it and building this very close to live experience, something that we are going to hop in for sure in Shapes later, because I think also that prototyping for mixed reality, it's much harder than a virtual reality experience in a way, because I mean, you need to be there and you make a lot of assumption when you are in VR, but when you are in mixed reality and there is actually a couch, or maybe the wall that you plan of being so big is actually so small, and the geometry of the room is not different. These are all things that you will realize only when you are actually are in it.
Yes. It can all come crashing down when you put it in mixed reality. You're like, oh, this is not at all what we envisioned. So it was very important for us, for example, to find out that ShapesXR had a mixed reality feature from day one. It was so important for us. That's why we've been working with Shapes like since very early on to our process. Yeah.
So the other thing I was curious is, how do you actually work with the localized team, right? So you mentioned that your team is all over the world, and how does that work?
Well, thankfully, the world has shifted to remote work in the past few years. So it's something that we've always been very focused on during remote work. But it is true that at that point, the tools that we use, digital tools that we use for prototyping and for communication, gain more relevance than ever. So it is quite of a challenge, but again, this is a team that we've been working 7 years in VR. This is the same team that we've been working all of our projects together. So we already know our our communication skills. They're at the highest level they could be, we think. So tools like ShapesXR really helped our art team, for example, to do more than they could have in remote work, while taking less time for our programming team, for example. That definitely freed our programming team to really focus on the coding, and to leverage our art team to just prototype and visualize everything through Shapes, for example.
Yeah, and to be precise, right? I mean, I'm seeing also the shapes, the space we're gonna go in there. When we're talking about the art team, it's about, for example, okay, we have this operating table, and then we have the patient's gonna be there, the UI is gonna be there, and instead the tools that the doctor is gonna be used are gonna be positioned in this place, and they are gonna move. So it is, sometimes there is this feeling that is all about the UI, but it goes way beyond that, right? It's about how these 3D objects are positioned in
The
space.
layout, how they position, the scale of the objects, everything. It all comes into
So there was actually a question here. Maybe we are going to discuss about this as well, but is Simtryx focused towards the medical education market, or more as a milestone assessment tool for residencies? Is there integration of peripheral tool training utilizing the Logi MX pen?
Wow. Very good question. Okay, so right now we're focused on the medical education market.
Right.
It's more of a tool for students that are in their first years of or are before residency in medical. Because it also trains them not only procedures, but also trains them in the critical judgment part of it, because there's a lot of AI. So in that moment, those first years, the students really need to maximize their soft skills, their critical judgment. Those are the things that they also need to maximize on. So that's where we're very focused right now on the medical education market and that part. And about the Logitech MX Pen, we've been looking a lot into that. Right now, we haven't included any peripherals in Simtryx. It's all through your hands. We've done a lot of coding, a lot of technology development for that part, but we are very open to implementing new peripherals as they.
And I think it needs to make sense, right? Because again, it's every time you are trying to add a feature, it's like, okay, why would we want to use it? Does a doctor would even use a pen? If so, when? Right? It would make sense that he might, right? In some situations, in some circumstances, but
we already have some procedures in mind that would very much benefit from the Logitech pen. So it's just a matter of when, I think.
So thanks, Maynard, for the question. And so maybe you mentioned a bit about the way you work. So can you guide us maybe to an example when you started doing some ideation with your design and art team, and how did that, let's say, moved further in development? Can you sketch a process for us?
Mm-hmm. Well, or like, yeah. Usually our art team has their own goals separate from the programming team. They are developing what the medical staff is letting them know in what the symptomatology of the patient is. So there's a very natural back and forth with medical and art, but then art needs to iterate, needs to see how it looks like in XR. But then for that, they will need to talk to the programming team, right? Because programming team right now, they're looking very much into the tech, into the AI part of it. So that's where, for example, in our case, ShapesXR comes into play because it gives the art team the tools to sketch out, do the back and forth with medical in XR without the need for programming team to come into play. So it gives us a lot of definitely we definitely gain a lot of important development time due to sketching tools that we can use. And as you can see right now, one of our main goals is how accurate, how visually accurate the patient is. So I would say that our team right now is as big as our programming team. There's a lot of work going on into to making them accurate, making them behave accurately, and also move accurately.
And those actually are the team we love. I mean, I want to be honest, because way too often you hear that there are this big development team. And honestly, you mentioned art, but based on your description, I think it's indeed more of an experienced designer, because someone that is able to understand the, let's say, the requirements of a healthcare professional, right, needs to go beyond making art, and it's about designing the full experience, the full user flow, and there is much more than that that goes beyond purely art.
It is absolutely that. We just call it art because there are so many things involved: the animation, art itself, modeling, but also the user experience. But everything goes into that team for sure.
So I want to shortly go in ShapesXR, but I was curious also about one thing, like what are the things that you have learned, let's say that you improved over time while going through this process? And again, you mentioned like established teams, 7 years working together. What are maybe some of the recommendation that you could share with others that are, again, other creatives or designer, and they might get from you based on going through this process several times?
Okay. Another great question because I think last month I was just thinking it's our first anniversary and what have we done right? What have we done wrong? What was crucial for our development? And I just thought about this. And I think it was crucial that we went around so much around the world with our demos since day one. And even through the very, very first version, which is like, yeah, I can see it and it looks like a completely different product. But even at that moment, I was still going to, let's say, I remember I was at GDC and I was testing the very first version with people. And in there, you could see the spots that Simtryx was very promising in. It was still very rough, but it was still very promising. And I got a lot of feedback of, yes, double down on this. Yes, double down on this. Yes, take this out. I was getting feedback from a lot of people. So during past year, I must have gone to like 10 different expos with just my headset in hand, just giving it out to people. Try it out. Give me a feel for it. I was trying it out with doctors, trying it out with experts in the industry. And all of that, I think, gave us so much feedback into what were the important features, what were the critical features that we need to double down, and which weren't. So I think that's something that helped a lot of Simtryx. And right now, 1 year later, now we have, I think, our 4 main critical pillars of what makes Simtryx. What's our biggest tech.
Yeah. I've got two very interesting questions actually that I want to share before maybe we fire up the headset. One is, does that include surgical education?
So right now we haven't done surgical education because our main form of control is through hand tracking. We believe that hand tracking is great for a lot of physical assessments. Right now we haven't cracked the code on how to also make it only through hand tracking have really accurate and precise movements that require surgical professionals.
I mean, you have a pen, right?
There you go. There you go. We've been thinking about peripherals, but our mission number one right now for us is to create a product that through only the hardware itself can be ready for mass adoption. That's what we wanted to do. We wanted to fulfill the promise of XR being the mass adoption headset or hardware for simulation. But we're looking into it. As you mentioned, the pen is just great to do any kind of like precise movement. So we're very much looking into that. Yeah.
Even though, I am not into this enough, let's say, but I can imagine how then we talk about healthcare, but there are so many
Verticals.
level of healthcare, right?
Yeah.
So there is also like operating a machine. It's a very different thing than diagnosing a patient, than doing a surgical operation. Uh, there are so many spectrum, right? And I think we
Yes.
now throw everything into the same bucket. But I think it's an interesting point in terms of verticals, because Miracle asked, what are the best approaches for making XR experience scalable, especially for institutions like medical university? So is there something that has to do with the content? Maybe how do you make this actually something that can scale?
Right. So there's one of those parts that is that I think other companies have been doing well, which is I think mainly the giving universities the option for them to customize how they want to, like giving them parameters so you can move around certain things. For example, we have a case of liver failure, but the professor can then tweak around how severe do they want the case of liver failure to be, and we have different patients depending how severe it can be. Giving options to our clients makes it more scalable. That's on like the user part of it. But we also believe that in the XR design part of it, there are multiple things that you can do to make it more scalable. For us, it was first making an MR so that everyone can use it. There's no one that says, "Oh, I'm dizzy. Oh, I don't want to use it," or "I feel like out of place." No, with that we make it mass adoption. No one has said anything about being dizzy with our tech. And then also we also believe to lower the barriers of use with like controllers. In this case, hand tracking. I think it also lowers a lot the barriers of use. And those two things that XR design, I think those have helped to make our tech be more scalable. Yeah.
Yeah. And there is also one thing that makes me realize now that you mention it, is like in the fact that this is in mixed reality, you prevent the need to having any sort of movement or teleportation. And then as a consequence, also the feeling of being disoriented, because I mean, you don't teleport in the real world, right? And it's like
Yes.
a wrong teleport movement moves you somewhere else, and then good
Yes.
luck getting back to the previous location when it's in
Yes.
mixed reality. Well,
Yes.
you're just everything is within the room. So
Yes.
that's it, right?
But also that means that it's more important than ever to be accurate with the layout of the 3D environment. That's
This is
why ShapesXR
perfect.
was so important for us.
And that's the
We
right
do so
moment.
much iteration with the layout thing because of that.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So let's go in so that we can show how that means, right?
Perfect. It's a great
Okay.
segue.
Absolutely, absolutely. Let me now go in and let me start. And start casting, and we see, meanwhile,
Okay.
we go. Wait a second.
Right now, I'm in scene 1. Oh, I think you're on mute. There you go.
Yeah, we are right now. I am not muted. Should be okay. Let me now go back. You can hear me, right?
Yes, loud and clear.
And let me now.
Okay.
Okay, so let's show this. And here we are. That's what we were talking about.
Yeah.
And I'm going to put the scale at 100%. And you see, this is a bit of our creative tools. We will not need them for now. And this is how a prototyping session in the Simtryx team look like.
Yes. This is our first prototyping scene. In this case, you can see it was in a state of blockout, right? This is the most basic kind of mannequin that we can get from ShapesXR. And this was using a bed that we imported. But it was our first use of shapes because we started using shapes due to the use of the layout of the environment, kind of like I was mentioning. And also we were trying out the menu. We were wanting to know how many buttons would it be okay, how many would it be too much, How big do we need the text to be? And different questions that we have, because every part of our simulation, Simtryx, goes with clicking with your hand naturally, which interaction you want. So that was the main first use, right?
Yeah, makes sense.
So that was scene one. And then growing from that, scene two, we can see, there we go. All right, in scene two, we started doing, we noticed that it worked very good for like UI, right? For like interfaces. So we started noticing, how do we make our login screen? How do we make it feel natural at this scale? So there's like the scene that we did for our login screen, which if you download Simtryx right now, it's exactly the same screen that we did months ago.
And maybe also people to realize, so some of these, I'm not sure if these were PNG or imported from Figma. The idea is that everything you can directly link and have your own prototypes that were built in Figma and have them here. And so if you also make a change in Figma, then you can automatically update, and that change is here. And by the way, now just I'm going to put it back in position. So these are all assets that can be changed,
Yeah.
or let's say, right, or moved. So this is impression, right? So this is all editable. This is not the final app. This is just a prototype, and just shows like in the lobby how this will look like and feel at the right scale. Because right now I am at 100 scales. I could go small, and then I'll have Hector small and tiny in front of the screen. But here we are. We can go back to 100, no problem. Yeah, please go ahead. Sorry, I just wanted to give context for people that might not be familiar
That's
with
the
this.
use case. That's definitely the biggest use case for us. And now in scene three, we look now at how it starts looking with our imported model from our art team. Now we started being more polished with how it's looking, and this now we're starting to play around. What's the scale for normal human being? How it looks in relation to a normal human being, and then if this is the body of the patient, then how big does the room scale have to be for you to move around and touch the feet of the patient, touch the head, the hand, and also interact with this other tip window that we have here. A lot of recommendations on how to start your experience, right?
And there is also here one thing that I see, for example, right? This is maybe an open questions, but so the user being here, right, and having this menu here position, it can kind of like right now in this specific layout, it can like obstruct a bit the view of the tools, right? So I don't know if, is this something that you have played around with, that you have changed, or how did that work?
Yes, it's like, how deep do we put the screen, right? Further out, it's better for like more it's easily readable, but then it covers the tools. Right now it's actually working like this because we're trying out new shapes. So it
exactly.
is that's a
That's
good
the
point.
feeling I got, because then we can also make this one a little bigger if we want.
It's actually slightly tilted right now in our simulation. Yeah, it's like this.
That makes a lot of sense. Great, fantastic.
But then what we started doing the next scenes, scene 4, is to look at different screens. As you can see here, this screen is only case information, but we were like, okay, how big do the buttons have to be if I want to interact with this? Is this button big enough for hand tracking? Is it not? So we started doing multiple selection tools. Now this is when you choose exposure, then you got to choose which physical exams you want to do. So going forward in the next scene, here we have, once you select it, it tells you what you just selected, how to interact. It says carefully observe the inspection points to gather information. In this case, as you can see now, for example, the body of the patient has changed. Now it has some hotspots here with an eye. That if you look at it for a minute, or well, not for a minute, for like less than a second, it'll pop up a different text describing what this area is all about, what kind of information you're gathering. In the next scene, we can have, for example, palpation. How does it look like? Palpation is you put on your hand. When you put your hand on top of the patient, you start getting and gathering new information.
And by the way, sorry, Hector, again, just to give context to people, here what you have when we talk about different scenes, we literally have some kind of like different slides, right, or different states. So this is one of the things that differentiate Shapes from other creative tools. You have these kind of like slide and scenes and example that you can browse through, and that allows you to experiment, try variants, or maybe show the progression of the user flow during the experience. So this is just to give context, and you can add and these scenes. So this is an example to show what we're talking about when we refer to scenes.
Yeah, exactly. And it's very important because one scene doesn't really change what you did in the past one. So you can start like really fiddling around, have people, medical staff, for example, start scribbling all over the patient and not really like changing all the other important scenes, quote unquote, you know?
Of course.
So, and here's, for example, how does it look when you are about to input your final diagnosis? You know, how would the menu be? How would the multiple selection part be?
Yeah.
And then I think this is a very important part. This is how we started to prototype. How is the multiplayer going to be like? Because we're like, okay, kind of how like how I mentioned, Gabriel, that layout is very important. So we're like, what happens when you put in 3 people in the same space? How much space are they occupying in relation to the patient, in relation to the menu? Is the menu still big enough for all the 3 to interact with it? Can they still move around and not like push each other? So we started prototyping that, fiddling with that until we got to a regular scale of size that we were comfortable with. One thing very important too, I think to mention is that this right now I'm seeing you floating in space. This was our first, I think, idea of how multiplayer would work because we're seeing our character here, but our programming team hadn't yet they hadn't yet developed the multiplayer part of it. So in ShapesXR, we were able to see ourselves floating around and starting to do a mock training, but inside Shapes to see how well it would look like, how well it would like function. So this is a very important component for us. And right now, we are at this stage. Right now, we are developing our next steps in our next simulations. This whole part of this is our new simulation is called the advanced simulation. Advanced simulation is a simulation that our patient, his vitals are dropping down by the second. You need to act fast. He comes in with a case.
So there is extra time pressure here.
Extra time pressure here, exactly. So we needed to make it so that it looks or feels like an ER room. In this case, we have now oxygen supply here, which is always visible, always usable. And you also have a monitor with the vital signs, always reading, always giving you out loud the vitals. So now it's like, now we've moved our layout, our menu to the left. How does it work? Is it still okay? Is it too big, too small? Is it unwieldy?
Absolutely. And you might think, for example, even of sketching things out, like, okay, if there was a sensor that maybe would be connected here, how would the let's say the cabling, for example, be connected to the machine? I mean, now, of course, this is an example, but you can start sketching and says, okay, this sensor here, this is how things should be laid out. Does that all make sense, let's say?
Exactly. And again, the very important part here is that this is all our art team's work. Like, we haven't even talked to the programming team yet. The art team is all doing this, leaving our programming team to work more on the AI part of it, leaving our programming team to work more on the connection part of it, on the real backend part of it. So that's, I think, how great sketching tools like ShapesXR can, what they can do for our development. And finally, in scene 10, kind of like what we're doing right now, we are putting, as you can see all around you, we are putting multiple patients all over the scene so that our medical staff can go one by one and draw, annotate, give their feedback on how they're looking so far. For example, that patient over there, we might be anaphylactic shock. So in this case, as you can see, this patient over here has a rash. Is the rash looking good? Is the rash too big in 3D? Are his eyes puffy enough? Are his lips puffy enough for the kind of case that he has? So in this case, what we are working right now is that we're trying to use Shapes not only as an art team tool, but also as a medical team tool. And that's something that we're we're still testing out, but we're excited about the possibilities, of doing all this.
Absolutely. And I mean, if you can bring a healthcare professional early into a space like this to give you early feedback, that's going to be super valuable, of course, afterwards, right? Because again, you don't need to have an APK, you don't have to deploy stuff. And by the way, for people that don't know, they could also join from web, right? So right now with a web editor, of course, I am always a big believer at doing this in VR at 100% scale, but you could still share a web link and then people could come in the scene and say, okay, this is how that's going to look like. And they might still be able to provide various feedback. And maybe just one thing, this is how easy in a way it is to switch between mixed reality and virtual reality. Here you see that there is this toggle. So I can go, boom, now we are in mixed reality. And now I can go back, go in virtual reality, and then explore, for example, these different patients with these different diagnoses and so on. So yeah.
Yes. So I think that's a very accurate step-by-step on how ShapesXR has been used in Simtryx since day one, I would say, since very early on in the early days of Simtryx. Now this is how we're using it. Now I think it's gone from being a design tool to then being an art tool and to now even being a medical tool, which is kind of crazy for us. We didn't really feel we would use that much when we started, but once we started, it's kind of hard to let it go.
Absolutely.
In a sense.
Thank you very much, Hector. Let's go back, and because you need to tell me and how you did this AI sorcery as well. Let's stop casting.
Okay.
And go back. And here we are. Of course, people have been
a lot of questions.
Yeah, I can imagine. Maybe we can quickly. I think there are a lot. So, but let's do this. We are going to go through this question shortly, but I do also want to cover that AI side of things in a sense that people might have noticed that also in the video that you have shared, you can talk with a patient. This means that and ask what kind of symptoms they have, how do they feel, and they provide answers that are within the context, right? So they don't go off topic, they stay within. And another important aspect is that the reply, it's pretty responsive, right? So you're not there. It's like if you're talking with an old person in a way, right? It's not really someone super snappy, but it's like, okay, I can get an answer in maybe 1 second. Maybe it's a bit distressed. That would be the way.
That's a very good way to put it, but it makes sense because you are talking with people that just came in for like some pretty serious cases. So it makes sense that they're in this kind of bit of a memory fog, so that half of a second is forgivable. If you're talking with a normal person in the street, then it stands out. But
so how did that, can you guide us a bit on that side? So how are things set up, and what are the things that you also have done from a design maybe and development standpoint that help you pull this off?
Okay, so in contrast to mixed reality, we didn't really start Simtryx saying that we were going to use AI. In fact, we started Simtryx with just doing pre-recorded responses, pre-recorded dialogues. And it was snappy and it was offline. So that was good. But then we very quickly noticed that the whole scope of questions that one doctor can do versus another doctor can do is humongous. It's just too big of a scope, and to make as many cases that we wanted to start making all these pre-recorded responses would be or too big, or we wouldn't have enough pre-recorded responses, so it would feel awkward. And that was one of the feedbacks that we got from going to all the expos. We were getting very good response. The part of voice, it was kind of sluggish. So we went, no, we need to take this another level. We need to do it in AI. So from then on, we started working. Our programming team went full on AI. We left the XR part for some months, but then we came back and we worked a lot in making it as snappy as it could be. Just to give a little bit of info, we are using OpenAI's LLM but we are training the LLM on our own server. We are training them with our use cases that our medical team gives us, and then we train the LLM to respond back and how it would for this for the patient. And then I would say that because of mixed reality, we don't have to render the whole background. So I think that gives us a bit more processing power to give more of the Quest processing power to how snappy the communication can be. And again, I think I have to thank mixed reality for that, because of that, we just go all in on the visual fidelity of the patient you're seeing, the physics of him, which probably you've tried it already. We have a fully rigged skeleton on the patient, and then the AI part of it. So we just focus and maximize the Quest's usage on those things. And I think that's been crucial for how snappy it feels, how quick it feels to do the back and forth.
Interesting. There is also another aspect that is still design related, and that is the way that affordances are communicated. Because, for example, when I have tried other AI agents, let's say, it is never clear when they are ready to listen, when they are thinking, when they are talking. It is just very tricky in a way because it's not human. I mean, there is not like a wireless sign here flashing when people are thinking, right? So one thing, for example, you have done that I really like is the way that the patient follows the user when looking around. I'm curious though, who does he follow when there are multiple people?
That's great. It follows whoever says the latest word, the most recent word. If he's talking to you right now because he's listening to you, then good. But then he's still looking at you. And if I move a bit to your right and then I say hi, he actually now snaps to me. Snaps to me and starts looking at me from then on until the other person says something else.
Interesting. So, and then it is something that people haven't really figured out completely, right? In a sense, like when is this agent or AI within my immersive experience? When are they listening? Have you done some iteration? What are the things that you have tried in order to signal, hey, user, you can speak. Hey, user, I am thinking. What have you tried?
We are in a constant, I think, improvement of our software. Even right now, we're still doing some tweaks because it's pretty. I think we had to figure it out when it's single player. When it's single player, I think doing the little audio lines that it like fills up, kind of like an audio equalizer when you start hearing some info. That sounds pretty good because it gives you immediate feedback that it's now listening. Seeing an audio equalizer means listening, and because it moves depending on how loud you are, then it feels it's very feedback oriented. So that's great, and because it's so snappy, we don't really need to add more icons to, oh, hey, right now I'm talking or I'm thinking, because it's so snappy. We don't need that. We just I'm listening and then you just hear it and that's it.
Interesting.
But right now what we are constantly tweaking is what happens when you have multiple people talking in the room. Who does it listen to, or how do we reduce the time that he misspeaks? Like he actually, you were talking to your peer, but then he responded to you as if you were talking to him rather than to your peer. How are we fixing this? Well, we're fixing this by him only recognizing when you are looking at him. When you are looking at him, if he feels like he's being referred to. So that's when he actually responds back to you. This has been in our latest update this month. And this was because our multiplayer update came out in December. All great, huh? But then in January, people started using it and they were like, okay, it feels great, but the guy's talking like 24/7. How do we shut him up? And I was like, okay, we need to go back to the drawing board and do another update. So that's the part I love about working in a startup, working in Simtryx, because you have multiple challenges, but
of course,
it's always improving.
And so maybe also like maybe we should have said it before, but if people want to try it, what are their options?
Perfect. So we launched our Simtryx demo in the MetaQuest store. Right now, we're selling to universities, but anyone with access that's logged in through our website, which is www.simtryx.com, you can ask for a user And because it's invite only, we are moving at a slower pace, but we're giving out invites every month, so people can give us their feedback and try it out. And it's easy. It's already on the MetaQuest stores. You just type Simtryx on your Quest 3, and then you can download it and access with your credentials. And that's
Yeah.
it.
And I don't know if so, and of course, I imagine that deploying or let's say making something that has an AI component in it to the general public might have also its cost. How is it? Like, is that, can you share something? I mean, I don't know how you could relate it in absolute amount or per user, or like how can you share that?
Oh, you mean cost per license per user that
No, no,
buys
no.
your
I mean, cost of the AI.
Oh,
Cost
the
of
AI.
the
Oh,
AI.
the
Yeah.
AI component. Oh, well, I mean, I definitely can't go into specifics, but I can say that the mini offerings. I mean, we've been through a lot of different offerings in the LLM space. What we found is that OpenAI, and it's maybe not the latest one, but the past ones, there is a sweet spot between cost effectiveness and it still works well enough for the AI.
Yeah.
So I would tell people to explore more into the mini options for OpenAI. Those are pretty good, and they can do a lot of heavy lifting, especially for back and forth. Yeah.
Nice. And
Very
by the way,
cost-effective.
there is, we can now maybe get some questions. There is, by the way, some panels are saying, yeah, the web link being shareable is very convenient. I have actually here, I managed to load, this is our web viewer. So you've seen here the scene that you have looked at before. You see here the the point that were shown, right? So this is all like running on the web. There is just a URL. You can share it with people, and potentially you will be able to see people that are in VR there moving objects around. So everything is in real time. So this is not baked. I can go here and move this object here, or someone could grab it, and everything is indeed in real time. So it is extremely powerful indeed to share your work with anybody that might not have a headset available, even though firm believer you would understand really things only when you are in immersive.
Well, we're kind of biased here, but yeah.
I know. But so that was a question. Let me see. There was which one of the OpenAI models, like O1 mini, which?
The O3 Mini works pretty well too.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, there are multiple ones, but I would just say go with the minis. I think minis work really well. Real well. Yeah.
There is another question here from Pudelechko. Is it reusable approach? Could users create custom trainings, or you have to create everything on your end if a different training is needed?
Great question. A part that I think is very important for scalability is our goal right now, for example, Simtryx, is to make it to give them the option to create anything they want. And slowly we're approaching to that point. For that, we need a big enough library of patients. For that, we need a big enough tools to gather from. So we're getting to that point. Right now, it is custom by us right now, as of today. But we are moving throughout the year, and we are hoping to give an authoring tool by the end of this year to every one of our users.
Absolutely. There is another question from Comforting Hug. What is your strategy, marketing, and fundraising?
Well, another great question, because our strategy marketing for us, because we're going very much for universities, we are going to trade shows, to industry trade shows in every region that we want to be. But that also means that for us, it was very important to have a demo on the Quest store. Again, we're mass adoption. So our funnel always needed to be start making new contacts in the trade shows. And then immediately, as you start getting interest, you give them just the link to the MetaQuest store. It can't be easier than that. It's the easiest it can be. So, and we're very happy with that process. It's been very important for us, because not only can we give them the link from medical store, but they can also refer to another doctor friend, and then they can start referring to people to download it with their MetaQuest that they own.
Yeah,
So
that's a good point, because you still do need to have a headset, right? And I am not sure what's been your experience with people having that headset and it's recommending to another doctor. I mean, I'm not sure what's the likelihood that there are all these doctors out there armed with MetaQuest.
But it's a great point. But there are more Quest 3s that you can imagine already deployed in universities or in medical schools.
Right.
A lot of people have been, piloting this, piloting that, buying a Quest 3 here, buying a Quest 3 here. You would be surprised to know how many universities just have a Quest 3 lying around somewhere.
Right.
So
Someone
someone
might
has
have it.
it.
If he's
Yeah.
really motivated, he's gonna find it.
Yeah. So it's really easy to do. And even people that have been very interested have just gone out to Best Buy and bought their own. Be like, yes, I want to try it right now.
This is the other point, I think that sometimes we are making this like VR. Oh yeah, it's so complicated. Like, I mean, man, if you really want to make it, and you are in a healthcare sector, it's not necessarily the poorest and the most
Yeah.
strapped for money. Like, I mean, a Quest is less than a phone by far, right? So
Yes.
that's another
It's easier
point,
than we think. Yeah.
if you want to. But there is another question here. How do you verify the design with users? Do you show team any videos of the designs, prepare the shapes, or give them prototypes to test directly on a headset?
That's a great idea. We haven't done that yet because to us,
Wait, what specifically you haven't done?
The
Because
part
here there's
of
sharing videos or giving them the prototype. There are two options.
yes, I was talking about giving them access to our clients or to our users, access to ShapesXR material. That could work, but right now we believe that there's a lot of heavy lifting in how Simtryx feels from the final build to the users. It works a lot, really good for internal use, but for outside use, we always want to wow them with not only the visual fidelity but also the interaction that only works, in our build. So that's what we're giving. We're giving test builds to our clients whenever they got it.
Absolutely. And so, guys, I mean, I'm curious if there are any other questions because Hector is here. We do have a few more minutes. So I will be curious actually to answer your questions. But maybe while we are closing here, Hector, what's coming up for Simtryx? And maybe both from product, right, and from the way you are creating these applications, but also to kind of like you are reaching out to universities, other universities. So how are these two things moving forward in 2025?
Right. It's a great question too. Let me just share a little bit of how it looks Simtryx today. So this is Simtryx today, right? Simtryx right now, we have, I don't know if you can see the slide here.
Oh yeah, let me add it. Now people see it.
Okay, perfect. So this is Simtryx after a year. We have developed the Simtryx framework, and this is our technology. So today, our scenarios are running in mixed reality, hand tracking with a physics system integrated, AI, and MR multiplayer. All this is just a great sandbox for us to start developing our dozens and dozens of scenarios that we have in our roadmap with our medical team. Just this month, we're going to be publishing that scenario that I showed you in the ShapesXR, the one with the advanced part. So that's our next step. And then in March, we're going to be now deploying nursing procedures, like IV procedures that we've been looking into using, for example, Logitech Pen for the IV procedure, which would be pretty interesting. But in a nutshell, I would say that 2025 is the year for Simtryx to take the framework that we've developed and multiply it very quickly into many scenarios for any kind of medical professional, medical student to use openly. And really, our long-term goal, I haven't mentioned it yet, but our long-term goal right now is to deploy this as a B2C, not really as a B2B. We want any medical student to be able to download this to their Quest and train themselves asynchronously, like with no need for a preceptor, just by themselves in their homes. So that's our long-term goal. But for that, we need to still be developing more of a library of cases, more of a catalog with the tech that we already have. That's our end goal for this year, really.
Well, I mean, as I say, I think that if you are into this field, if you want to also test and learn how some of these interactions have been done, designed, and created, you have seen the shape spaces in shapes. You can have an impression of what was the journey, and then I invite you really to download actually the app available on the store. You can just type Simtryx with a second Y, so IY, and it will pop up, and then I'm pretty sure that. Maybe in an email you can mention, "Hey, I was at the webinar with ShapesXR. I would love to see it." I think that Hector might put you maybe on top of the list, maybe
Please
or
do.
higher up.
Please let me know. Please let me know. Yes. Yes.
So, guys, unless there are many questions, I want to thank Hector. Thank you very much. It was a real pleasure. Surprise really to know how mixed reality, something that was maybe at first might sound like an overhead, turned into like an enabler, right? For you, for facilitating with motion sickness, for lowering the overhead in terms of computing power for the headset. It doesn't need to render the environment, freeing up for AI. Oh, wait. There is maybe just, okay, let me end of this question because I've asked it for people and it would be unpolite to answer. There was like, do you focus on any particular field of disease injury?
Do I focus on any? Not really. We're just right now we are putting out the scenarios that we feel are the most used in medical schools. We're not following a specific group, but we are following three different categories. I don't know if I mentioned this. The first one is the basic scenario. Basic, not really as in the cheapest one, but more like it's the one that the patient comes in, and it's kind of like the one you try, Gabriel, which is you have the patient talking, and you need to end with the diagnosis. That's like the basic standard one. But then we had the advanced one, which is when you have to work against time to improve the vital signs of the patient. That's our second category. And our third category is called procedures, which is just specifically and very much focused on nursing, in which you just have to do the procedure correctly, the step by step. Doesn't really engage in AI, but more like in hand tracking and in the physicality of it. For example, IV, intubation, and so and so and so.
Absolutely. So I hope that answered the question. I think we have covered a lot of grounds. Hector, thank you very much. Best of luck. And of course, we'll stay in touch. Curious to see how Simtryx develops this year.
Of course, let's keep in touch and very excited to show you very soon the next steps of what we do at Simtryx. Very excited about the future.
Awesome. Thank you very much. And thanks everybody that's been joining in. If you're looking for a platform to design and prototype, share your work and offload developers like from Simtryx team and get designers more empowered, of course, go out and check ShapesXR. It's available on the store. And if you love it, get in touch. We would love to hear what you think. Bye-bye.
Bye, everyone. Thanks.